Our dumbbell deadlift is a posterior chain exercise. That means it is working a lot of those muscle groups along the backside of the body, including those calves, hamstrings, glutes, erector spinae, low back, upper back, rear delts. There's a lot of different muscles involved in a deadlift. It is actually called the king of exercises because of the fact that it recruits so many different muscles when performing that move. We're going to be demonstrating it here with dumbbells, but you can do this move with kettlebell, you can do this move with barbell, with a sandbag. There's so many different options that you can perform this move with. It is also probably one of the most complex moves and the hardest move to master. So I'm going to go over all of the basic tips for it today. This is going to be a little longer video for this exercise, and I want you to go through them slowly and start to work on each one before you build up in weight on these and start progressing as far as your speed and your strength and stuff go. So let's start with our setup. We're going to grab those dumbbells. We're going to bring our feet about hip distance apart here. So just kind of a little narrower than we would do for a normal squat, right about hip distance here. We're going to have those dumbbells right in front of us. These dumbbells are going to stay in close to the body throughout this entire movement. The further out those dumbbells get from the body, the more pressure is going to be on our low back, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep those weights in close to the body to avoid any unnecessary strain on the low back. So in our foot position, dumbbells in nice and close in front of us here. We're going to make sure those shoulder blades are squeezed back together. The initiation of this movement, or the beginning of this movement, is going to be started by those hips pushing backwards. Those weights here are going to go straight down and straight up. A lot of people kind of think of this move as coming out with those weights and then coming back in. The point of those weights is dropping straight down. We're making room for them with the hips. So weights are staying in close, shoulder blades squeeze back. I push my hips back out of the way so that those dumbbells start to come on down the inside of those legs. Hinge on over. I'm keeping my head in line with my spine. I'm keeping my shoulder blades back and my back nice and straight. My legs are going to bend slightly as I hinge on over. Dumbbells are going to end down kind of where my shins are at here. So a little bit below the knees, a little bit above the ankles. I'm going to be looking straight down at the ground. Notice my head is still in line with the spine. Weights are still in nice and close. Now I'm going to do that in reverse. As I come up, keeping those weights nice and close, I'm going to push those hips forward, stand nice and tall, squeeze my butt, squeeze those glutes at the top. So again, there's a lot of hip motion in these deadlifts. These are not a squat. So we're not kind of bending the legs like this while keeping the chest up. We're focusing on that hip movement, that hinging motion. So again, slowing it down, dumbbells are in close, feet hip distance apart, shoulder blades back, initiating that movement by that hip hinge, pushing those hips back. Weights throughout this whole movement are staying almost in contact with those legs. As I hinge on over, legs do bend slightly on this one, but I'm keeping my hips up high. I'm not dipping down like I would like this for a normal squat. Think about those hips staying up, even though those legs are bending slightly. Ending about shin height, coming on up, squeezing the glutes at the top. So the focus on this one, you are going to feel it in the back of the shoulders, you are going to feel it a little bit in the low back, but we really want to think about using our glutes and hamstrings in this move. So that pushing back of the hips and not really bending the legs except just a little bit. You should focus on feeling a stretch on the back side of those legs, a stretch in those hamstrings back here, and then squeezing the glutes at the top. That's another important movement. At the top, come squeeze nice and tall. We're not hyperextending, so we're not leaning back like this. That's a common mistake on this move. You're standing nice and tall, but you're engaging and you're squeezing the glutes at the top. Biggest mistakes made on these, I'm only going to go over a few because there are so many. The biggest mistake is going to be rounding the back on this movement. It's going to be a lot easier for you at home if you have a mirror. You can kind of look over and kind of watch your body and make those adjustments in that mirror. The biggest mistake, like I said, is when we're coming on over, a lot of times instead of this hip motion coming back and keeping that back straight, I see a lot of people rounding on over like this, and that's going to put a lot more strain on the low back. So if you have the ability to stand in front of a mirror and to hinge on over and then look in that mirror and straighten everything out and make sure that back is nice and straight, use it, utilize it. That's going to be your best friend for kind of figuring out your body positions here. So again, first and most common mistake is going to be rounding that low back. Another really common mistake is going to be not keeping the weights in close to you. So instead, I'll see a lot of people kind of hinge on out like this as they do that. Like I said, the further away the weights are, the more strain is going to be on the low back. So our goal is to make room for those weights with the hips, but to keep them in nice and close to the body throughout that movement. Another big common mistake, bending the legs too much, just like you would on a squat. So I'll see a lot of people on those deadlifts not keeping the hips high, but instead hinging on over and then bending down like this in a squat at the bottom. We do bend the legs a little bit, but you really want to think about trying to get that stretch down those hamstrings and glutes and keep those hips as high as you can with that slight leg bend at the bottom. This is just going to come from practice. You're going to have to slow down, try different leg bends, focus on getting that stretch down the back, utilize a mirror if you can to keep that back nice and straight. But biggest things to remember, those are the biggest common mistakes. Don't round the back, keep it straight, keep those weights in close to you, and then also those legs do bend, but they're not bending as much as you would for a squat. That upper body is getting over almost parallel with the floor instead of staying upright like you would on a normal squat. Those are the key points to remember. I will probably do another video on more fundamentals on this move because it is such a big, complex move, but those are great places to get started on. Use them, practice them, start to perfect this movement so that when you are ready to go up in weight, you will have all the fundamentals down.